Hi everyone, this is Chantay, aka Chantay on Twitter and Instagram, or just simply Chantay. So I'm here with my Aftershow Chantay's analysis for the Twitter and YouTube followers of mine. If you're not a Twitter follower, you can follow me on Twitter. I am Chantay. If you're not a YouTube follower, my name is Chantay Berry. So I'm here with my daily spiel. I'm going to start off with coronavirus because coronavirus is, the main thing that's keeping us here and why we're all doing live streams and Zoom meetings and yada, yada, yada. So as of Wednesday, September 2nd, 2020, the 9th month of the year, the 6th month we've been dealing with coronavirus has been declared as a national emergency from the national emergency inside the White House. We have 25,934,466 cases of COVID within 188 countries, with a global death toll at 861,512. Here at home in the U.S., we account for a fourth of those cases, so we had 6,113,160, with the national death toll at 185,704. These numbers come from the Johns Hopkins website directly. I have not watched TV. TV says something different, but I am going on the actual website, which is Johns Hopkins, that monitors and tracks all the cases of COVID-19 throughout 188 countries, including the United States of America. So that's where I get my numbers from. And at home, because I normally do the global stuff on my daily live, you can watch, you tune in on Instagram, or you can subscribe to the YouTube channel to hear all the rundown from most of the countries that I cover. I do not cover 188 countries. I cover about like a third of the countries that are affected with COVID-19. Okay, so according to the New York Times COVID map, which it tells me states individually versus the Johns Hopkins website, it only tells you by county and not by state. So I wanted to go by state. So California is leading the pack with, once again, 720,850, followed by Texas at 649,233. Florida is at 633,434. New York is at 440,947. Georgia is at 258,482. Illinois is at 241,282. Arizona is at 202,898. New Jersey is at 194,378. North Carolina is at 171,114. And Tennessee rounds out that top 10 with 154,833. So those are the top 10 states with the most cases of coronavirus. There's some other states I catch, such as Louisiana is at 150,734, not too shies away from Tennessee. And then you have Virginia at 542, followed by South Carolina at 120,503. As you can see from these numbers I'm saying, they have rising cases of COVID-19 every day due to reopening without a plan. So that's where we are. And of course, we have no national corresponding strategy to combat COVID-19. Not at all. Nothing from this White House. We're basically, the leadership and the White House is absent. The occupant of the White House is still holding rallies with masses of people, all shoulder to shoulder without masks, and him himself without a mask, which is sending a message and saying that COVID is actually gone, but it's really not gone. 6.1 million Americans are dead. 6.1 million Americans are sick. 185,000 Americans are dead. We have no relief to combat COVID, no coordinated plan, no confidence within our scientists now that it has been contaminated with the administration, the Trump administration, continue to bulldoze their way and bully scientists. And they appear less and less on camera. So that's where we are in terms of COVID-19, as other states are doing their best to follow the science and listen to the experts, versus here, which we are the richest nation in the world, and we're having an issue containing our coronavirus. I mean, this should not come as a shock to anyone. Not a damn soul. Not at all. So that's where the coronavirus is. But I want to move on to also, before I move on, Tom Seaver died from coronavirus at the age of 75, while The Rock and his family has been tested positive for coronavirus. So I'm just going to make this very clear. COVID-19 does not discriminate against anyone of any sex, religion, or race, or even sexual orientation, nor political affiliation. Does not at all. This virus affects every human creed. It weakens the person's immune system, and eventually, hope not, eventually it kills people. Over 185,000 Americans are dead, and we're in the second day of September. I'm pretty sure by the end of this month or in the beginning of October, we'll have about 200,000 deaths and counting. And probably close to Christmas, we probably have about 300,000 Americans dead because of the negligence of this administration. So those who want to fight with me and say it's just not this administration, you're completely fucking delusional. And yes, I use that word because at this point in time, we're 6 months into this coronavirus. By next Friday, it will mark exactly 6 months that a national emergency has been declared on coronavirus, and we still have no national strategy to combat COVID-19. The testing is atrocious. Treatments are not effective. This vaccine they're trying to push out is not safe, according to medical experts. Epidemiologists said it, and virologists even said it, and they're right. I'll believe the virologist and the epidemiologist and even a medical doctor any minute before I believe a man who sits up in the White House and is telling you to drink bleach and inject disinfectants to cure COVID-19. So that's where we are, America. Believe me if you don't, but this is the hardline truth. Then I'm moving on right now to Biden and Harris's press conference. Biden had a press conference and Kamala Harris hosted a call with Minnesota voters and Minnesota leaders. So Joe Biden, who addressed the press, was basically addressing the whole reopening of schools, as him and Dr. Biden were pretty much brief. And as of tomorrow, they are going to Kenosha to meet with Jacob Blake and his family as well. The hardline truth that should be the name of your news channel. Well, eventually, I am my own little small podcast. I definitely don't want to be a news channel, but I appreciate it. Thank you. Back to school has always been a special time. That's what he said. It also should be a season of promise. I remember going back to school. I used to be excited. I used to wear my dresses and get my hair done. If you're from the hood or from, any neighborhood, Back to school always has been a preparation, especially the first week of school. Some of your parents may take off or not. So I know with my mom, she will make sure our hair is braided if we wanted braids or we wanted a blowout. And make sure our outfits for school, and make sure we have our school supplies. The school supplies will always been the first thing on her list because she will go get it early before other people will start shopping at the last minute, making sure we have our book bags, our hand sanitizers, tissue in our bags, and the school notices and all the yada yada. Of course, we go to the doctor, you get your shots, and for the school year, submit your immunization card to. I went to public school in New York City. I grew up in New York City. So there was a lot of preparation going back to school. And especially the years as you go by, you want to make sure your outfit's on fleek as well. So it was a special time for kids to go back to school, see all their friends that they have not seen in the summertime, and also get to know their new teachers and their classes and everything. But this is very strange times, unconventional. I'm an adult. I'm in my 30s. I am going back to school to complete my master's program. So my classes is online. I'm very lucky. But there are kids in different states that got to go back to school because of their legislator and their governments. So that is in line step with the current occupant of the White House. So that's where we are in terms of that. So he blasted the Trump administration, say if Trump and his administration have done their jobs early on with the crisis, schools would have been open and they would have been open safely, which is true. The CDC has some type of guideline to reopen schools, but it was edited because, once again, Trump infiltrated his way and basically bulldozed his way of saying, no, make sure that is too strict. Make sure you change that. First and foremost, children in particular from K to 12, more so from K to 5, are the super spreaders and germ spreaders. So when they catch, say for example, I used to work with kids. When they used to catch a cold, they will bring it to you. Next thing you know, you have a cold. And after you have a cold, you give it to whomever. It's a chain. So pretty much, kids are the super germ spreaders. And so when they don't have a mask on and when they're hugging their friends and high-fiving their friends and playing tag with their friends, they don't realize they're giving each other like a cold or something if they have a cold, or giving each other sicknesses or whatever. So, of course, Donald Trump don't seem to understand that because he can't relate to regular human life. My mom said he has dementia and all this stuff. She realized he had dementia. I think Trump has been this way. Trump has always been this way. I grew up in New York. I know how he is. He never visit black neighborhoods, and if he did visit black neighborhoods, it was only for a photo op. My ex-boyfriend said he came to their school, but was it in intent where he cared about the well-being of kids in urban schools? No, he went to private school his whole entire life. He wasn't educated to, as we say in New York, a PS school, which is a public school system. He didn't. I was educated through the public school system from K to 12. So Donald Trump does not relate to anybody. And that's all I'm saying. He also said he has a plan to build back better. He does have a plan, and I read some of it online. It was actually very cohesive and very strategizing. One of them, he said he recommends for Congress, as he said today in this press briefing, to pass a separate emergency act that will cost $30 billion to put the changes in schools needed to reopen, which is true, safety measures to reopen, supplies such as masks, cleaning supplies, hand sanitizer. If kids probably don't have hand sanitizer, because it's been tough to find hand sanitizer those ones that's being made by different companies. I'm like, I don't trust those. I use Germex or Purell, and thank God I got some in my house. And some of these parents need to stock up because it's a national shortages on hand sanitizer, especially brands like Germex and Purell. Also, he blasted Trump, basically telling him to get off of Twitter and start talking to congressional leaders to come up with a plan. He also said about the HEROES Act, which covers, I believe, about $58 billion. I'm not quite as sure how much money, but it covers that rough amount to reopen schools and to give public school systems and local school districts, of what they need. And I know I live in New York, and New York City has the largest, has the largest public school system ever. 1.1 million kids go to a public school in New York City from K to 12. So that's a lot of children. So that money will be in good use. And as my governor said, which he's a native-born New York City guy, even though he governs the whole state, said the state of New York, which the HEROES Act does cover money for state relief, needs $61 billion to function, to pay city workers. And city workers in New York, and yeah, we do have the biggest unions ever. That's a fact. DC 37 and 32, I forgot, and 1199. Oh, boo, to DC 37? I don't know. I don't know too many people that work in a union anymore because unions have been disbanded pretty much. But we do need 37. No, we do need $61 billion. So we can pay firefighters, we can pay teachers, because teachers are the underpaid folks. I have friends that are teachers, are daycare teachers and public school teachers. So, and former public school teachers. Oh, okay, not quite sure. And public school teachers. So it's pretty much, oh yeah, 2 unions. Pretty much. Especially to the police union. I don't want to get into them because that's a whole separate conversation. Because I was never a fan of them. But he pretty much like summed it up. You can go on the website and look at that plan that Joe Biden's proposing. $30 billion to reopen. And that's just only to reopen. That's a separate plan from the HEROES Act, which if you didn't read the HEROES Act, that is true. If you don't believe the HEROES Act is proposed by the Democrats. The whole entire House of the Democrats does student loan forgiveness is in there. Also, $58 billion for schools. More relief checks per month. Not Kamala's bill. Kamala's bill is a separate bill with that includes Bernie Sanders and Ed Murphy on it, which is $2,000 a month until March 2021, or really to June to 2021, because it's 3 months after. What else? More money in contract tracing, because it's a lack of contract tracing. I'm pretty sure there's more people walking around with the coronavirus, which I'm not surprised. It's a whole host of ranges of things. So I encourage you to read up on the HEROES Act. It's really good. I mean, it will help people like me, because I got almost $70,000 in loan debt. So, yeah. And also Kamala Harris pointed out the same things of Trump is offering no real plan to reopen in schools. That's true. And if her and Biden was in office, if they were elected, they would ensure more money to FEMA, work with FEMA to make sure kids have cloth masks. Because FEMA just announced today they're not giving kids cloth masks. Like, are you kidding me? Like, oh my God. Kids are these super germ spreaders, as I said. Like, kids will give you a cold. If they give you a simple cold that can last for a week, COVID is serious. Because a lot of these kids, I know, live in multi-generational homes. Not just with their parents, but their grandparents, and even sometimes their great-grandparents. God bless, if they still got their great-grandparents around. They live with those folks, right? So, as I said, for this administration to be reckless with this whole school reopening, and let's not forget about Betsy DeVos, who basically couldn't answer simple policy questions and don't know things that's going on in her department because she's just that dumb, is part of this recklessness of reopening schools. So I just need everybody to know that this administration is a threat to this country and to democracy and human life, as we all know it. So that is that. Now I want to have this conversation about white moderates versus white progressives. So Ed Rendell is a white moderate, and he is the former mayor of Philadelphia and the former governor of Pennsylvania. He said this today. Well, it was reported that he was worried about Biden had been flat-footed in his response. I'm assuming his response to, all what's happening in Kenosha, which Biden is actually for the protests. Yeah. What we are afraid of is moderates saying, I hate Donald Trump, but I need to be safe. I have to hold my nose and vote for him. If that him is Donald Trump, which it is, then white moderates really doesn't have the interest of black and brown people in this country. White moderates are the reason why we're in this shithole. Or why we have the most shittiest man from Queens, New York, and I say that candidly because he is not from Middle America. All these books that everybody's writing on him about, Trump is the blue collar president, or Trump is, fire and fury, and now that he has dementia, everybody's trying to study this man and don't realize that New Yorkers, black people, but New Yorkers as well, warned you about having Donald Trump assuming that kind of power. We warned you about Donald Trump being in that White House. We warned you about his racism, his scamming of businesses. Just because he got his names on a couple of buildings, which they're about to be taken down, doesn't mean he's for people of color. Just because he took pictures with a couple of black celebrities doesn't mean he's for the black community in its whole entirety. Everybody posting up those fucking pictures online and everything. And yeah, he's not a politician. Everybody's trying to study him and make him this. No. If you dig into Donald Trump's history, Donald Trump is very lucky to this day that he's still walking around alive and talking all this shit that he's talking. Don't have the hands to back it up. Because Donald Trump scammed a lot of businesses and a lot of people that he had to keep settling in court. Donald Trump settled in court over dozens, with an S, of times that he's very lucky that he's alive in this world. He almost didn't want to pay them all back. And yeah, career politicians is the worst. And I'm about to get into those progressives too, because some of them are career politicians as well. So that's my take on white moderates. So some of these white progressives I take huge issue with, because they're almost the same as white moderates. But the difference is they're progressives to more white people versus black people. They talk about Medicare for All, which Medicare for All was by John Conyers, not really by Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders just more brought it into life, but doesn't mean who's the Medicare for All for. And I'm not blaming Bernie. I have no issues with Bernie, so let's just make that very clear. I have problems with some of the people that is surrounded by Bernie, especially his white counterparts, especially his quote unquote white media support in the progressive side of things, like Young Turks. Claiming all this report about black people and they're for Black Lives Matter. No, you're not. Every time when a black politician does something or proposes a bill, like John Conyers, they didn't tell you that John Conyers is the man behind Medicare for All and was behind it in 2003. No, but they praised Bernie for that. So Bernie pretty much Christopher Columbus that idea, right? Let's be clear. And for those who don't like what I'm saying, then this is not for you. Like, really not for you. But he Christopher Columbus that shit. Also, in his free college, that's cool. But when he first brought that into light, he just said free college for everyone and not specifying it until he was grilled on that question back in 2016. And then in 2020, he broadened it more and brought it into light. But where Bernie had messed up, and other progressives messed up, is not expanding the coalition to older and middle-aged black voters. Because we're the loyal base of this party. I'm in my early 30s. I'm still in that 25 to 34, which I am 34. But I felt like most of his policies really didn't speak to me because I'm not in college anymore. I'm over 25 years old, obviously. And you're talking about a bachelor's degree. The Medicare for All, you want to tax people that make $29,000 and more. $29,000 ain't shit. So I made that before. And I struggled. And I lived with my parents. Imagine if I lived on my own. And what else? It was not really that much of plans he really talked about that really gravitate more so to the middle-aged black community that actually showed up to primaries and showed up to general elections. So that's where he messed up at. Because this here is his own doing. Like, he had the opportunity. He had support from a Mississippi, I think Jackson, Mississippi, the mayor in Jackson, Mississippi. And he was supposed to speak in Mississippi, I think around the time of March 7th, around that other Super Tuesday. Instead, he went to Detroit because he won Michigan in 2016. But I just felt like, dude, this was your time to expand your fucking base. And you didn't. You just didn't. So, as I'm saying this here, and I'm being quite frank, and I'm being real about my shit, Bernie did it to himself. But what my issues with white progressives is they feel like they're on your side saying all these social reforms, criminal justice, Black Lives Matter, and UBI, universal basic income. But for whom? But for whom? You don't talk about reparations. Because Bernie wasn't for reparations. Biden wasn't either. But Bernie was supposed to be the progressive king of the party. And pretty much, he wasn't for reparations. So right then and there, this is his own doing. His own fault. Bernie did it to himself. And for white progressives to ignore the whole what black people want besides reparations and the economics, We want affordable housing, which Bernie did not speak about housing. Bernie didn't really too much speak about education in African American and brown communities. He spoke a tidbit, one of his surrogates written a policy of the black maternal mortality rate, but he did not bring that to the platform. He didn't really bring up judges too much. He didn't speak at the LGBTQ town hall with CNN, nor I think at another town hall. And at She the People, it was a huge disconnect with the audience, which was African American women. Bernie Sanders had 5 years to expand his coalition, and he didn't. And that is where my analysis kicked in, and that's where he did wrong. And that's where the progressives who say they're for us don't talk about that stuff. They talk about only Bernie and Elizabeth Warren sometimes. Oh, they're the progressive saviors, and Andrew Yang, when they don't talk about issues that affect black people. And if they do about black people, it's only about economics and healthcare, when there's so much more that we could talk about. We also care about climate change. We also care about roads and infrastructure, which that has not been brought up. Health issues, health disparities that's affecting African Americans. Medicare for all won't change that. You have to acknowledge the issues that are affecting black people and talk with black people. And another thing, he never talked about race relations. I haven't heard him say much about the killings of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor. Nor the systematic racism within educational institutions, job institutions, affordable housing. I have not heard that. Hey, how are you? So when Bernie talks this shit about, or his progressives talk about this shit, talking about they're for us, and they're not. And white moderates too, they're in that same coin. So I like for the Ed Randells of the world, the Chris Dodds of the world, the Young Turks of the world, that includes the Jenks and the Annas and the Emmas and the Johns of the world, the Crystal Balls of the world, the Ryan Grimms of the world, and all of them of the world to just shut up. Keep black people out your mouth. Cousin, I hope you enjoyed this live, and I'm sorry that I'm cursing, but I had to let it out because I'm so sick of white moderates. And also, just to extend on these white moderates, I have to play this clip of a white moderate in particular. Trying to find it, so just give me a moment while I can find this clip. Okay. I'm trying to find that video because that thing really annoyed the hell out of me. So irritated. Just completely irritated. So here we go.
How many of you voted for Donald Trump in 2016? All of you. Okay, show of hands. How many of you plan to vote for him in 2020? Now, just because you raise two hands doesn't mean you can vote twice. I just want to be clear.
We do know that.
One vote. Okay. So 3 of you plan to vote for him again in 2020. How many of you plan to vote for Joe Biden? Okay, 3 hands went up there, the bottom row. So, Anne, let me just start with you. How did President Trump lose your vote?
I voted for him in 2016 because he wasn't a normal politician.
I have to admit, I didn't pay too much attention until the pandemic started. The pandemic was when my eyes began to open, and June 1st, when he said U.S. troops on peaceful protesters in Lafayette Square, that was my cross the line moment.
Mm-hmm. And how do you feel now about your 2016 vote for him?
I think it's one of, if not the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life. I feel like voting for him helped kill over 100,000 Americans.
So, Jessica, what do you think of the president's response to COVID?
It's been abysmal. He's disappointed and abandoned the American people. My defining moment is when he said he takes no responsibility. Buck stops with you.
Exactly, Danella.
For me, it started almost immediately from day one when he lied about how big the crowd was at his inauguration. And I have tracked him since then, and he lies every day to us. I don't know. The one thing he has told the truth about, he has not taken 1 ounce of responsibility for COVID. From day one, we should have had a national mandate on wearing masks. We could have had this thing under control in 6 weeks if he had just done his job.
LA, what is it like for you as a Trump supporter to listen to your fellow panelists who have, more than soured on him?
I think that they're blatantly wrong, with all due respect. I think Donald Trump has done an amazing job from day one, an amazing job through the pandemic. No, he did not cause the pandemic. So when he says, it is not my responsibility, I did not cause this, that is correct. No one could have done a better job, in my opinion. No one.
He is the only leader that hasn't followed the science, the data, and the experts' advice. 4% of the world's population. We should have under 50,000 deaths. We have over 180,000 deaths. That's not doing a good job.
Let's talk about the death toll. Has everyone read the CDC report that just came out? My goodness. It is a fraction of what they originally said.
What the CDC says is that 6% of the people who've died from COVID also had comorbidities, such as diabetes, but they would still be here today if they hadn't gotten COVID.
Well, then we'll agree to disagree.
So just to be clear, Ella, you don't believe that 183,000 Americans have died?
Not of COVID, no.
I want you to know that I'm a nurse, and I've been a nurse for 27 years, and the response to the pandemic has actually been President Trump's greatest achievement. He was the one that closed off all travel at the beginning of February. You guys remember what was happening in January? There were no other elected officials that were even thinking about COVID because they were busy doing their impeachment. Joe Biden, he was the vice president for 8 years. So why didn't they prepare for a pandemic?
They did prepare a pandemic playbook that the Department of Homeland Security under President Obama handed over to the Trump administration. They had a pandemic office, which President Trump shut down. And so they say that they did try to prepare the incoming administration.
I'm also a person, I'm a medical information administrator, worked in hospitals for 25 years. And I think President Trump actually has done a pretty good job. I am impressed. I am impressed with how he has garnered the help of the private sector to help indeed get a vaccine going, bring in the PPEs in, developing new ventilators. It's all been good.
At the moment, President Trump, according to the latest polls, is not doing well with women. I think he has something like a 33% of all women approval rate, a 65% disapproval rate. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't look at polls. I just talk to the facts. If you watch the RNC as opposed to the DNC, the RNC was filled with people from across this country, people of every race, people of every creed, people of every background, socioeconomic status.
And wasn't the DNC also? I mean, wasn't the DNC showing diversity also?
No, the DNC was very, I didn't see all of it, I will say that, but all of the clips, I probably watched about 2 hours of clips, and it was very much, the attitude is just get rid of President Trump.
I would say the RNC convention tripled my opinion that he is inclusive, that he is for sure not racist.
But I want to ask the bottom row, and do not plan to vote for him again. Did the RNC ladies give you any second thoughts because you heard so many testimonials from people who supported President Trump?
Absolutely not.
Why not? I mean,
Okay, so I'm going to stop that right there. But this proves my point about what Martin Luther King said about white moderates. And I just want to pull up what he said about white moderates for those who, let me just take a look at this. Let me just find that article of what he said about white moderates, because I think people need to understand, like, about how white moderates operate. So I'm going to just read a little bit of this. First, I must confess that over the few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro great stumbling block in the stride towards freedom is not the white citizens counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is an absence of tensions, to a positive peace, which is presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you and the goal you seek, but I can't agree with your methods of direct action, who parenthetically feels he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by the myth of the time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait until it's more convenient season. That shit just proved it right then and there. All those women that voted for Donald Trump in 2016, which they are part of that 53% of the white women. Thank you, cousin, on this live. Shout out to your cousins that's always watching it. Prove my point that you never, and I have nothing against your ideological preference, whether you're white, you're black, you're Hispanic, Latinx, Asian American, Island Pacificer, or indigenous. It doesn't matter what your politics is. But when it comes to a percentage of white moderates that identifies themselves as white moderate, don't put all your eggs in a basket to trust them. Period. Out of the 6 women that voted for him, 3 are going to vote for Biden and Harris. Which, first of all, if you voted for Hillary Clinton, we wouldn't have been in this fucking predicament. But you believed disinformation, and you believed a New York bullshit con artist who has a history of scamming people, which New Yorkers have warned you about during the 2016 elections. And for the 3 women that still voted for him, how fucking deplorable are you? Don't believe that 185,000 Americans are dead. Are you fucking kidding me? That 6.1 million Americans are sick? Talking about Donald Trump had the best response to COVID, which is reports saying he didn't. His own medical agency said he did not have a great response. Other countries around the world, and I can just tell you some of the numbers. St. Kitts has 17 cases. Dominica has 20. Grenada has 24 cases. St. Lucia has 26. St. Vincent has 61. I mean, New Zealand has in the 2000s, but they have no new cases of COVID-19. And that's a woman running their country. St. Martin don't really have any cases at all because I don't see them on the John Hopkins website. And they just opened up their country, but they're not opening it up to the outside public. They all listen to their scientists. Even England is not even in the top no more. The UK. nor France. China is under 100,000 cases and they just finished their second wave. And here is the United States, the freest nation of the world, the nation with the most resources in the world. But we have an incompetent man who runs the presidency thanks to those part of that 53% of the moderates, the white female moderate voter who voted with their pocketbook and their husband's interests and their bigotry than the will of the American creed. This shows right here that this country has a problem with race. And this is why the racial reckoning is happening. And it's happening full front and center. Not just with George Floyd, now with Jacob Blake. Okay? Now with Jacob Blake, we have a problem. We have a problem. And this resident refuses to acknowledge systemic racism in our criminal justice, and housing, and economics, and education, and all. And even in South Carolina, who has fucked up broadband with two fucked up ass senators, I don't understand it. I still go to my mom's hometown. It was my mother, myself, and my sister Kim. We went down last year, and still, there is no broadband. Are we surprised, folks? Because I'm not one fucking bit. So that's why I don't put your trust in white moderates. Not even, and some white progressives even voted for Donald Trump that were Bernie Sanders supporters. 12%. Oh dear. I hope everything works out well down there, cousin, because I'm serious down there. And I was just talking to my mom about the broadband. And she was saying down there how it's crazy because she just talked with one of her sisters on the phone. So, but I'm going to end this. When you don't vote, remember, 4 more years of Donald Trump will get you in a situation. We'll be in a COVID situation. It will linger further. Not a trusted treatment, not trusted vaccine. The Great Depression of the 21st century. I don't trust that vaccine because I think it's rushed and there's no clinical trials, and even epidemiologists and other medical doctors prefer, to have a rigorous clinical trial test. But when you don't vote, you have this linger around, no criminal justice reform, no all other things. So let's keep that in mind. But until then, you have a good night.